Hello, hello, hello. I'm Glenn Wilson, President and CEO of Communities First. Thank you so much for being here with us at Community Candor to talk about something that is so taboo that people do not want to talk about, which is bankruptcy. I am just so excited that we're going to have a great panel, awesome moderator to take you guys into, or take you all into this fabulous discussion that we're going to have today. This has been a part of the Show Me the Money Day event that's been sponsored by TCF, CDM, as far as to bring this high quality content to you to make sure that we're providing you all the information that you need financially to be successful, right? Not only with your personal finances, but also with small businesses. We find out that there are so many needs in our community on every day, each and every day that we go out, and we find out one of the biggest things and barriers that we have in our community is access to information. But not only is access to information, it's access to correct information. I think so much times that we get information because social media is so available, right? That people can just post whatever, right? I see people post bad financial advice, or people that have, like rub two nickels together and they're telling you how to do this. Like what we need to do as an organization is that we are here to make sure that we're giving you information that is from high quality individuals, people that's been doing this, people that are experienced, but people that also understand the things that impact our community on an everyday basis, right? So especially things that happen in the minority community, and how to make those relations. Like, we understand that there is a disproportionate of resource, that there's there's disproportionate resources that happen throughout the community, but we want to make sure that we're giving you the necessary tools that you need to make sure that the information that you're giving is empowering you, is educating you, and keeping you informed. And that's what Community Candor is all about. And so last year we had started this whole thing with Community Candor, and Renee put together a great, I think we did like 17 sessions last year that reached, tens of thousands of people. And so, this year we're just really just getting it kicked off. And this is really just the beginning of a lot that's going to be happening throughout the year. So I just want to say, please, whatever you do, go online right now. Don't just sit here and just look at it, but share, right? That's what I'm always asking. Just click the share button, share it with your friends, because the information that we get is like, don't try to be the expert, right? That's one thing that I always realize. I don't have to be the expert, but I do know a lot of experts, right? And that's one thing that I think that makes us so successful, not only as a small business owner, but as a person that's trying to be a good steward over the finances, right, that I have personally, right? And so is to make sure that you get the experts in the room. That's what we did today, is we got the experts here to talk to you about your needs. So please share about Bankruptcy 101. I'm going to turn it over to the fabulous Renee Kent, that's going to be the awesome moderator with you today. And enjoy, share. We'll see you soon. And thank you so much for joining us on this panel too as well.
Thank you, Glenn. Good afternoon. My name is Renee Kent, and I will be your moderator for this session on Bankruptcy 101. Welcome, welcome, welcome. As Glenn mentioned, this is part of our Show Me the Money Day series, and this is actually the last episode in this series, not the last of the year, but the last in our Show Me the Money Day series. So if you're interested in information on taxes, if you're interested in information on saving money, please check out our other episodes through our social media links. Let's go ahead and get started. So a couple of housekeeping things I want to share with you. If you have any questions, we will be taking and answering questions live. Go ahead and put them in the comment section. And please fill out a participant survey. We have it on the screen, and we'll also share that in the comment section as well. Any of the information that is shared today will be sent to you, so you won't miss anything. So let's go ahead and introduce our great guest that we have here. I'm just going to call your name, and then if you can tell our audience, who you are and a little bit about your background. So we'll go ahead and start with Ms. Liggins.
Hello, hello, hello. Good morning or afternoon where you are. I am coming to you from the great state of Texas. I'm not sure when you're going to watch this, but it's right after Snowvid. So I'm super excited to be here. I had water for the first day in a week. So I have showered. I have on clean clothes. I am delighted to be here. I am a 20-year restructuring lawyer, and that's just a fancy way of saying that I help individuals and businesses, both public and private companies, when they are in a crisis mode or distress situation. And like I said, I've been practicing about 20 years. I have an office in both Houston and in New York. And again, thank you for having me.
Thank you for being here. And I'm so glad to hear that you have your water back. Crisis certainly hits us in all different forms. So I'm glad that you're with us today. And our next guest, AC Brown, please let our audience know who you are and your background.
Hello, everyone. This is AC, the CPA with John L. Financial Services. I am a 15-year licensed certified public accountant. We hold an office located in downtown Flint, Michigan. We specialize in taxation, also financial services such as financial statements. We've got a ton of experience with bankruptcy, both individual and businesses, helping businesses get through the bankruptcy process, because that's a part of it. CPA services, financial statements, tax returns, all of that is a part of the financial bankruptcy process. And we are here to help businesses who are going through that process, that difficult decision to make to file bankruptcy, both on the individual level and the business level. So I'm excited to be here. I'm ready to get rocking and rolling.
Thank you. We're glad that you're here as well. So we're going to be talking about bankruptcy today, and we're going to take the taboo out of bankruptcy and really help you understand how it can be used as a tool. And to Glenn's point earlier, this is all about information, providing with knowledge. The greatest piece of advice that, I think we can offer you today, or for anybody, whether you're considering bankruptcy or looking at any of the financial tools out there, is to learn everything that you can about the process so that you can make an informed decision. That's what it's about, making, an informed decision, having the information that you need so you can do what's best for you and your family or your business. So bankruptcy, we know there's a lot of forms. We know there's a lot of deadlines. It's a pretty involved process. So Ms. Liggins, you are the expert. So I'm going to give you the floor.
I'm gonna take that. I'm gonna be called an expert today. You can call me expert, yeah, and you can call me Demetra. So let's just talk first about what bankruptcy is. The case law is super clear that bankruptcy is a process for the honest yet unfortunate debtor. So you just need to be three things: somebody who's in debt, a debtor, you need to be honest, and you need to have bad luck. So that is three things that almost all of us probably have had at some point in our lives, if we're not necessarily experiencing that today. And then what you should decide is if your luck and misfortune is severe enough to make you want to file. And is this the right time or the right moment, or is there a way to get over with it? I say honest, and I want to reiterate that, because if what the catalyst or the thing that's making you push you towards bankruptcy is a hustle or fraud, then this is not the process for you. We want to make sure people stay out of prison, out of jail. So if it's something like, I'm thinking about filing because I don't want my baby mama to know how much money I make, or I want to move my assets away from my cousin who I think I'm supposed to split my grandmother's house with, things like that, that's not honest. That's dishonest. And that is actually grounds to dismiss your bankruptcy and could subject you to a bankruptcy crime. So you want to make sure you're thinking about what is the motivation, and are the motivating factors pure to a certain extent. It can be a beat down, but it can't be dishonest. Next, I want to talk a little bit about the types of bankruptcies there are. So there are more than this, but these are the three that I think probably impact, the majority of people. There's Chapter 7, there's chapter 13, and there is chapter 11. And I'm going to start with chapter 7 because it's probably the most common form of bankruptcy that you should file, although most people know about chapter 13. So chapter 7 is when you, and that's you an individual or you as a business, are badly in debt and you are unable to pay your debts as they become due. So basically the bills are coming and you don't have enough to pay them. But it's a liquidation. So it's essentially a chapter 7 trustee is appointed by the federal government as a part of the process. I should say that bankruptcy is a federal relief. It's not done by state court. It's governed by the federal government. And so the federal government will pick a chapter 7 trustee. There's a panel of them in your area. They're already decided. So you can't say like, I know somebody who could be a good trustee in my case. It doesn't work that way. They're already decided. They're usually randomly picked, computer generated, unless that person has a conflict. They get it, but they're appointed immediately. And their job is to assess your assets, determine if they can sell any of them. If they can sell them, they will sell them on your behalf so that the money and the proceeds that they receive from that sale can be distributed to your creditors. If you are a business and you file a chapter 7 bankruptcy, you are going out of business. The business ceases to do business. You cease operations and the trustee will take over whatever there has. But in most cases, the business never does any business going forward. If you have employees and you're filing a chapter 7, that likewise means that they're going to lose their jobs. You can, if you're a larger company, you could be selling divisions, things like that. That division could be spun off and going out of business. But it's important to know, especially like if you have employees, that's not the best chapter if you're wanting to retain operations and or you're wanting to retain your employees. The next one I want to talk about that a lot of individuals file is a chapter 13. A chapter 13, I like to call it the wage earner plan. I call it the wage earner plan because you need money, you need wages. So if you don't have wages, it's probably not a good plan for you. It doesn't mean that you absolutely cannot file, but if you don't work and you don't have regular income that comes in, it's probably not the best plan for you. So you need that regular income to develop a plan. And a plan really means a super egregious, strict budget. So they call it a plan, a chapter 13 plan, but really chapter 13 is putting you on a budget. And if your income is less than your state's median income, they'll put you on that plan for 3 years. If your income is greater than the state's income, then you're on the budget for 5 years. And I think it's really important to understand that, because if you're not good with a budget now, you might not be good with one that's court ordered. So you really need to think about what your plan is. And I've seen lots of people file chapter 13, and I would love to hear from AC on this because I think he probably has too, where people go into the chapter 13 plan, are only in it for a hot second because they're not able to maintain the plan. They're not able to meet the demands of the agreement that they basically set out with the court. Have you seen that as well?
Yeah. So with the chapter 13 plan, this is where you could actually seek out assistance with managing your budget. This is when you do seek out help of a CPA to help you develop your budget, or a financial planner, certified financial planner that will assist you in creating that budget and keeping you honest. Because like you said, Demetra, it's 3 to 5 years, and you figure your financial behaviors have gotten you to that point of bankruptcy. So this is the time where you really need to lean on some experienced professionals to help you through the bankruptcy process, because you can, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but you can be eliminated from the bankruptcy process if you fail to meet that those requirements within that 3 to 5 year period.
That's right. And that's why I said you need to really be having candid conversations with your CPA and your bankruptcy lawyer about the likelihood of your success in this type of situation, given what your propensities are and how committed and diligent you are to it.
And Demetria, while we're on this topic, can you talk about what happens if you fail to maintain that plan?
Then your case can be dismissed. And that's what I'm saying. So then the court goes in and says, okay, Ms. Liggins filed bankruptcy. She's not actually meeting her obligations. And your case gets dismissed. And so all the protections that you were receiving, which we'll get to in a second, they go away. And then all of a sudden, all that pressure, because most people file over pressure, and then all that pressure is coming back. And so, and so you really need to be honest. We're going to get to the steps in a second, but when you're doing your credit counseling and all of that, about what you can do and what you can't do, because lots of times, many of us, myself included, I'm very ambitious about what I'm going to do financially, right? I'm going to be my highest and best self as I talk about what I'm going to save this year or what I'm going to pay off. And how that actually plays out in real life sometimes I'm my highest and best self, and sometimes I'm not. And so you need to really look at your patterns. The third type of bankruptcy that is available or is commonly is Chapter 11. And that's what I spend the majority of my time in my career on. And there's Chapter 11 is only, well, I shouldn't say only, it's available for individuals, but you would need to be a very high net worth individual for Chapter 11 to make sense. So basically, you would have to exceed the limits in a Chapter 13 plan to file a Chapter 11. In the 20 years I've been practicing, I've probably worked on 3 individual Chapter 11 cases. They're very, very rare. Essentially, Chapter 11 is the process that businesses use. So when you hear that, I'm trying to think of something retail, Brooks Brothers files for bankruptcy, or you heard, I'm trying to think of another good one recently. Oh, Belk just filed for bankruptcy this week. If that's a Chapter 11, they're available. So Chapter 11, there's 2 types of Chapter 11. It also has a plan, but it can have a plan of reorganization or a plan of liquidation. And a Chapter 11 liquidation is similar to the Chapter 7, where all of the assets are going to be consolidated, liquidated, sold to pay back creditors. But the difference of a Chapter 11 is, absent some type of negligence or mismanagement or fraud, the owners of the business stay in possession of the business. The business continues to operate, and it then will, it will then take care of making the reorganization efforts. If you have a non-Chapter 11 liquidation, we call that a Chapter 11 reorganization. And that is when you know that they actually plan to stay in business and they're basically just trying to right-size their balance sheet. So many times you'll see that because they're restructuring debt. You'll also see it if people are trying to get out of contracts. That's kind of a little known fact that people file bankruptcy. One of the, things that people love about bankruptcy is it's like Jesus. It washes assets white as snow. So when you get to sell something, it comes out super clean. And so whatever's on it is gone. Another thing that people love to file bankruptcy, especially business owners, is it lets them get out of bad contracts. So if I can make you remember the contract analogy, it's Toni Braxton, right? Toni Braxton files bankruptcy as an individual, high net worth earner. She files bankruptcy not because she's broke. She files bankruptcy because she's a terrible contract with the record company. And she doesn't feel like she's getting all of her royalties in the way that she should. And bankruptcy allows her to reject that agreement and then restructure basically her debts, because she'll be able to cut a new deal with them or some new record company, because she can actually, shed, again, take off of things that are difficult. And that's what is the really big advantage of filing bankruptcy, is it's going to give you options. It will give you some optionality where sometimes you have felt constrained or confined. It will open up possibilities. I don't know if you want me to get into like the steps of a Chapter 13, or you want to because it's pretty arduous. I mean, I guess I would say this. If you want to file a Chapter 13, you should definitely understand that you're going to need to take credit counseling. That is required before you can file a Chapter 13 bankruptcy. You also need to understand that any bankruptcy, the Chapter 11, 7, 13, they all have tons of paperwork. And it's pretty tedious. And so I don't recommend using any professional that just sort of hands you the paperwork and says, here it is, fill this out and come back. The paperwork is, very complicated. There are a lot of ways that you could step on a landmine, not disclose something that you were supposed to disclose because you are filling the paperwork out under the penalty of perjury, which means you need to be telling the truth. And sometimes people are not actually lying. They forgot. So they forgot they had this bank account. They forgot their grandmother left them a savings bond. They forgot to put it on there. They forgot that when they got divorced, they got part of their husband's pension plan because it hadn't started paying out yet. But they forgot that these were assets that they possess. And I don't know, AC, if I've seen a lot of forgetfulness in paperwork. I tend to ask my clients, even my very sophisticated business clients, the same question 3 to 5 times to make sure that I have the right answer, because people they're stressed, they're in a stressful situation. And so their minds are not actually always as sharp because they're stressed out.
Right. Yeah. So what I've been able to do is kind of develop one of those client checklists. And it kind of goes over identifying, okay, what are my assets? And, going through that, saying, okay, I do have this cash account. I got this savings account. Okay, what are my investments? Do you have, and it really does help you if you retain some type of financial professional, whether it's a CPA or a certified financial planner, or someone with some expertise to kind of poke and prod and really dig in. That you said it right. In your initial statement of honesty, because you have to be upfront in bankruptcy. This is you're talking to the federal court at this point. The feds have access to just about everything. Anything they want. They got access to it. Anything that's attached to your employer identification number for your business, and anything attached to your social security number. Those are all federal numbers, and they have access to it. So it behooves us to be open and honest. And like you said, sometimes you do forget, but that's why you hire a professional to poke and prod and to ask those penetrating questions. It may seem invasive, but the bankruptcy process is invasive.
And you want it to be, because you're trying to get everything in there so it's a part of your estate. And if you forget it, then it's not a part of the discharge, which is the whole point of what you're seeking. But I find, sort of to your point, I'll have my checklist and I'll say, like, okay, Ms. Kent, tell me how many bank accounts you have. And then they'll say, like, I just have one bank account. My bank account is at, Michigan State's credit union. You're like, okay, great. And then you're like, well, where do they deposit your check? And then they're like, well, I put that in I put that in the city. So then You're like, okay, no, so we have 2 bank accounts. Right. So then that's to me how it goes. It's like, okay, so there's actually 2 bank accounts. You're like, are there any more bank accounts? No, ma'am, that's all the bank accounts I have. And then you're like, oh, okay. And then you're like, well, have you had any death in the family? Oh, yeah. How did y'all pay for that? Oh, well, we used, the CD that was with so we have 3 bank accounts. Right. So to me, that's how it usually has. It's not that someone is, and it's the same way for businesses. Right. They'll have, especially nowadays where people are starting and forming their own LLC. They started a entity here. They started an entity there. They never did anything with it. They forget to tell you. And then you're like, well, when I check the Secretary of State, there's this, Brown LLC. What is that? Oh, I don't use that. Okay, but we still need to list it. And so I feel like what you're saying is absolutely right. It's almost like a autopsy of your financial life.
Yeah.
And if they were to try to open you completely up. And you also touched on EIN numbers. I mean, this just happened to me a couple weeks ago. One of my friends from college was like, I need your help. I have these taxes that are due and I don't have the money. So I created me a new EIN number so that we can, and I was like, no, that's going to be illegal. You can't just
Right.
get a new, nope. They can't just get you a new EIN number and do the same. Is it the same thing with the same people with girl? No. And she was trying to explain to me like, no, you don't understand. I was like, no, I understand. That's called fraud. That's right. I get it. That's just called fraud. Like you can't just get you a new EIN number and pretend like it's
right.
new. Or you can't do, or me and you can't do that.
Right.
No, nobody can do that.
So people don't understand that it's not just getting a new number. It's not, if you have an obligation to the government, if you have an obligation to someone in this business name, and you're going to have to figure out how to take care of that. You can't just create a new thing and kind of stick and move. It's not that simple.
Right.
Now, I want to go back really quick because I think something really important came out of this discussion, in that people should not go at this alone. They should really engage a professional CPA, attorney. But when you're in financial crisis, right? How do you afford a CPA or attorney? What steps?
That's a great question. And let me also start off by saying that it's okay to be a seeker of information. And just because you go see a lawyer doesn't mean you actually have to file bankruptcy. Just because you go see a CPA. And many times we have, especially in our community, we have so much financial shame about not having our arms around all of our debts, all of our obligations, that things actually could have been avoided, or things could have been simpler if you had talked to someone earlier. And so I do think that you should seek out help. Most lawyers and CPAs have a free consultation, or they'll have a very limited, you get an hour for a discounted rate. And now understand that it's just a consultation. So don't show up at the consultation with, your shoebox with all your receipts. It's like, ma'am, this is free, right? This is going to be a high level conversation, or as I like to say to people when they start bringing, now you're getting into what people pay me to do. Like, if you want me to, but go and don't be afraid to go have that. And especially right now, while everything is virtual, and you can do both in person or whatever, maybe that you feel better in the privacy of your home, having a virtual conversation about some of these difficult contacts, just to get a sense of like what is available to you at this moment.
Yeah. And so to your point, Demetra, like, even the during the bankruptcy process, services for CPAs can be considered administrative expenses. Mm-hmm. So we could actually, put CPA services, like financial statements, cost of tax returns, those types of services that you would typically hire a CPA for. You can put that in the administrative expenses of the bankruptcy. So you're paying that bankruptcy over a period of time. Those accounting services can be a part of the administrative expenses. So don't let the cost necessarily deter you from filing bankruptcy, because there's avenues and there's ways to incorporate those costs.
Right. And there's also, most states have a bar association. They'll have for indigent people. So if you're really you can go and check what the limits are, and they'll have a lawyer who can help you. I just think that you shouldn't be afraid to have a conversation. I'd like to share with people, especially now that he was the president. Donald Trump filed bankruptcy more than like anybody, trust me. And he likes to tell people he's a millionaire, billionaire. I'm not sure that that's true on a financial statement, but Kentucky Fried Chicken, they filed bankruptcy before. Many of your biggest success stories you will find. Dave Ramsey. People love Dave Ramsey. And I know that Dave Ramsey loves to tell people not to file bankruptcy, but here's the gotcha. Dave Ramsey filed for bankruptcy.
Right.
So he'll tell you not to go get this relief, get this help, but he got it. And it is a part of how he became Dave Ramsey, right? So, there are things that are not dischargeable. And I do think we need to spend a couple of minutes talking about that, things that bankruptcy won't do for you. So bankruptcy won't get rid of support obligations. If you have substantial debt that is because of child support or alimony, anything that is sort of ordered by a court in connection with your family life, bankruptcy will not discharge that. They're not going to tell you that you don't have to take care of your children or pay your ex-husband or pay your ex-wife. That's not how bankruptcy works. It doesn't do that. If you have substantial student loan debt, the way that most of it is written today, there is some hardship for the discharge of student loans, but it's not available for most people. And that's important to really know, especially as people have debt. And what I mostly see that with is people who went to college for a little bit, went to a trade school for a minute, didn't finish. So now they don't necessarily have the income that was that supports the debt that they went to get, and then they want to sort of throw that up. Now, I know that the Biden administration is talking about student loan relief, but that is not in place yet. And I think that that is another thing to just really understand, some things that it won't discharge. It can't help with that.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And even some federal taxes, it may not relieve everything, especially if it's related to payroll taxes.
Right.
You're going to have FICA, Social Security, like you're not going to get very much relief from those things. So it is important to know. And Demetria, I believe you touched on it earlier, but the reasons of why you file bankruptcy is to protect something. Like you're protecting an asset. So if you don't have, I tell people this:
if you don't have assets, get on into bankruptcy. It's time to. You don't need right. You're gonna need something. You need something to protect, right? Yeah. Right. And that's also why, like, if all you have is you have no assets, you just have like credit card debt, then that's why Chapter 7 sometimes is a good mechanism. Like, put all that stuff in, get it all discharged, start fresh. Now, you should understand that filing bankruptcy has consequences. So I love bankruptcy. I'm a big advocate of it. I think it's a great tool, but you should understand, especially from an individual standpoint, right? It is on your credit report. It will be on your credit report. But my kind of response when people say, because I think this is something that Dave Ramsey says a lot too, like, well, don't file it, it's going to follow you around for 7 years. I'm like, so does not paying your bills. Mm-hmm. That has a much bigger impact of you having continual late payments, charge-offs, you putting stuff in your baby's name because your credit is messed up. Now you messing up your child's credit. I have seen that's another great reason to file. If you grew up and someone took out a bunch of debt in your name when you were 5 years old, your grandmother or auntie had a charge card in your name, and I've seen people have $20,000-$30,000 of debt, and they're 18 years old from family members. Right. And those are times to really be thinking about discharging that. And that's what I mean. Sometimes that can be difficult because you're like, well, my mama was a single mom and she was just trying to help. And that's all good. Like, there's no judgment as to what people did or why they did it, but you shouldn't have to be subjected to that and keeping you from starting fresh as a young person for debt that you didn't even create.
Yeah.
That's a great segue, I think, into, one of the questions that came up from our audience about the implications of filing bankruptcy and why people avoid it, why it's helpful. Before we jump into that, I just want to remind our audience that they can ask their questions in the comments and we'll address those questions while we're going through this. And I also wanted to point out something that was mentioned earlier. Pre-bankruptcy, one of the first steps or requirements is getting approved credit counseling.
Mm-hmm.
And so, going through that process, you'll get an evaluation of your financial situation. You'll have a discussion of, the impact of bankruptcy as well as alternatives of bankruptcy, and put together a budget plan. And I mean, that's truly valuable. You don't have to wait until you're in a situation where you think you need to file bankruptcy to get that counseling.
And you can have that counseling up to 6 months. So you could do the counseling and then determine that you don't need it. But the thing about the counseling, and even before you go to the counseling, is I would say this: tell yourself the truth. Like the thing is you have to have hard conversations with yourself about what you owe. But I want to touch a little bit about why people don't file, because it's kind of related. A lot of times, especially the media has taught you that bankruptcy is for people who buy big screen TVs and Jordans and don't pay their bills. That's what the media tells you. But the statistics don't bear that out. Most people file bankruptcy over a health issue or a job loss. So they have had some type of medical something happen. Someone got sick, someone had a surgery that the medical bills started not necessarily overwhelming everything, but putting a strain on the household. And what you find is if you get one little strain and then you can't, then it's a domino effect. And then before you know it, you're years down and it's disruptive. Or someone loses their job, or someone gets laid off, or someone has to take a job making less money. What we know statistically is that it takes most of us one paycheck to get used to making more money when you get a raise. So you get a raise. So let's say you get paid on the 15th and the 30th. You get a raise on the 15th. By the 30th, you have adjusted your whole lifestyle to your increase in income. On the flip side, if you lose income or you make less money, it takes the average person 5 years to adjust their spending to having less money come into the home. And so that is why people just typically have more going out than they have coming in, and why that is. And so that's why I also say, I know I keep talking about shame, but that's where the shame comes. But there's no shame if you've had a job loss or if you've had health challenges.
Yeah, if I can just add to that, one of the Demetri, like you just hit the nail right on the head, is this media propaganda that the bankruptcy is for people who are just basically financially terrible people. And when most people, when they enter into contracts, they're entering into contracts with good intentions. And you're entering into a contract based on the information that you have available at the time of the contract. With a job loss, with a health issue, those types of things do cause the greatest amount of stress. If you were married, divorce causes financial stress because your lifestyle was based on two
incomes,
and now
right?
you're down to one. And the house and all that stuff becomes financially strained. You become financially strained, and you're just taking on water. And you go 3 or 4 or 5 years. Unfortunately, you go and the bills keep mounting instead of saying, okay, wait. After a couple of months or after a few months or so, you're saying, okay, maybe I should adjust. And it's that shame of saying I had to downgrade my house, or I had to get rid of my car and go to a used car. I had to give my car back. We're talking about preserving your financial freedom and preserving your mental health as well, because financial pressure is one of the leading causes of mental health illnesses. So we're talking all encompassing at this point.
And I will say this: I see that at every income level, whether someone makes $30,000 or $300,000. This, like you said, financial pressure. I think social media hasn't helped. When I was growing up, my mama used to say people want to keep up with the Joneses. Well, now the Joneses are on Instagram and they are stunning on you. You know what I mean? Like all of a sudden you see they went to Bali, but what you don't see is they charged it.
Right.
You know, or what you may not see is that their grandmother died and left them money and they didn't have to pay for that at all. So you're trying to compare what they do, what they have, and especially with divorce. I think that's a great point, AC, because lots of times divorce is not only going to be a change in your personal life, but it is a change in your financial life.
Absolutely.
And you should go ahead and embrace that. That might be the time to say, I don't want this house. I don't want this car. I had this because we were together. It's just me now, or it's me and the kids, or whatever. But, you know, I often say, like, use that as your chance to do. I'm a big advocate of, like, if you get divorced, use that to get any and everything you want to change in your life. If that's, you know, if you decide that's when you wanted to get, you know, your hair dyed blonde, you're like, girl, I went through a divorce, you know, I'm getting new hair, right? Like, oh, I'm getting divorced. It's the time to not have shame, right? I'm making lots of changes. I am changing my marital status. I can go ahead and change my financial status with it.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. I think those are critical points. And you know, that is really the time to actually seek financial experts to help walk you through that process. And I do want to dispel a myth that CPAs are super expensive.
Oh yeah.
And I can't afford a high price CPA, or I can't afford a high price lawyer. There's so many ways to assist. And I will say this because I'm one of 5,000 Black CPAs in the nation. Okay. And if we're having a really candid conversation, many of us, especially in our Black communities, we avoid these bankruptcy laws because we don't know about it, or there's this myth that we can't afford it and it's going to cause some irreparable harm to us that we can't bounce back from. That's just not the case. People file bankruptcy, organizations file bankruptcy
All the
every day,
time.
all the
Yes.
time. Yeah. And KFC is still selling fried chicken.
I know they are, and it's delicious. So go
Yeah.
ahead and file your bankruptcy. And that's exactly right. I think that we have a mentality, period. And I know we talked about this a little bit before about, and I always say, I use the analogy, it's all from the kitchen tissue, right? It all starts with your mama thinking she can do your hair in the kitchen, right? And so you don't need a professional to do your hair. Well, if you don't need a professional to do your hair, now people are like, oh, I found a form and I don't need a lawyer. Oh, I found a spreadsheet and I don't need an accountant. But the truth is, most of the time, if you went and did your research, and so my advice always is, do not assume you cannot afford something that you haven't researched. So you most of the time will find that it is in your grasp. It is in your wheelhouse. And especially for our small business owners that are listening, if you're not ready to hire an accountant, a banker, and a lawyer, you're not ready to be in business. If you feel like those are not luxuries in your business, so you need to have that in the budget. If you don't have that in the budget, you're just not ready. And that's okay. It's okay not to be ready. It's okay to understand what you need to get ready. But if you have a business, and not a business, what you say, not a business, an actual business, it is going to require that you have a lawyer you call for your legal issues and an accountant, and you need a relationship with a banker. If you don't have those three things, you're not actually in business.
Absolutely.
Okay, and I know, AC, you have something to say, but I'm going to interrupt because I want to make sure we address these two questions really quick, and then we
Yeah,
can jump back into the business discussion. But two quick questions. Now, there are items that can't be discharged, like student loans, certain taxes, and alimony, child support, things like that. If somebody is impacted by those type of expenses, what do you recommend?
Well, you can still file for bankruptcy, but they're going to have to be in the plan. Like if you're filing Chapter 13, they have to be in the plan to be paid off at 100%. So we're not saying that you can't file. You just need to understand that, you think about, we talked about it, it's a budget. So that is not going to, there are certain people you can give like what we call pennies on the dollar. So let's say it was a $5,000 credit card bill, and your plan is going to provide that you pay 80% of it or 70% of it. But when it comes to taxes, domestic obligations and student loans, your plan is going to require that those are paid, and they don't have to be paid in, like you don't have to pay them off in the 5-year period, but you're going to have to be making whatever the payment is in full. There's just no way around it.
Right.
And now let's talk a little bit more about that 3 to 5 year plan that you have in place. Life happens, right? So if somebody loses their job or say incurs an extreme medical expense during that 3 to 5 year plan, can it be amended? What are the remedies?
You can file what's called a motion for modification of a plan, which means you have to go back to your trustee and work out what the new plan would be based on your new circumstances. And then you take the revised or amended plan to court, you file a motion and ask the judge to approve it. So you basically will have to, put on testimony that says, this goes back to this honest piece under oath as to what the change is, how long the change has been, how long you expect the change to be. So if, like, for example, you lost your job and you got another job, but you're still looking, you got to be careful about when you go back, because you can't you only have so many times you can amend your plan. So you want to make sure you kind of go in once, but you can amend your plan. You just need court authority to do it.
Okay. And now this is kind of a specific question, but for those items that can't be discharged and you have to pay them in full, is there any way that you can make modifications with regards to the interest?
No, not that I'm aware of. I mean, I guess there's always a deal you could cut. The IRS sometimes will cut a deal with you, but it's arduous. I mean, I'm not saying that the IRS, I have cut deals with the IRS. I have never cut a deal with the IRS quickly.
No. So how you would do it with the IRS is you would attempt to file an offer and compromise. That's the legal IRS. So you would essentially give them, and you're going to go. So the good part is that if you already gone through the bankruptcy process, then you've already gone through a lot of the legwork to offer a compromise, because the IRS is going to ask you the exact same questions that the bankruptcy attorneys or bankruptcy judge has asked. You'll present those things to the IRS in an offer and compromise. And so there's certain rules and regulations of how you go about that, but there is some tax relief that you could potentially have. But like Demetra said, it is not done very quickly at all.
Mm-mm.
And you still have to, and one of the other things, even while you're going through the bankruptcy process, you have to file timely tax returns. You cannot skip a year of filing your tax returns. You have to file annually.
And that's another reminder too, that remember, when you owe the government, it's one entity. So if you're behind on your student loans or your taxes or whatever, and then you are entitled to a refund, you're not going to get the refund, because it's like when your cousin borrows money, right? And they borrow $100 and then they come back and ask for 50, and you think to yourself, no, don't you owe me money? Like, I can't give you any more money. You owe me money. And the federal government is the same way. So once you're in your bankruptcy and you clean up your tax returns and all that, you get your tax return file and you see this refund coming, it's going to go to pay your Chapter 13 plan. You're not going to get the money back. So you just got to know, but it should be okay. And you should be actually see that as a positive thing, because it's helping you reduce your plan obligations.
Yep.
Okay, so I'm gonna let the conversation keep flowing because I had to interrupt there, but I know we were sharing some do's and don'ts about what to do with your business or business.
Yeah. So, Demetra talked on it earlier, and she made a comment about when do I hire or when do I seek a financial professional when I'm doing my business. So you should actually be seeking that in the planning stage of your business, because CPAs and lawyers, they can help you with the correct filing of the entity status. If you maybe the LLC is not the best
How about they help you
entity.
determine what's the best entity
Yeah,
for you to have?
right,
Yes.
yeah. So maybe the LLC isn't the best. Maybe it's an S corp, or maybe it's a C corp, or maybe you maybe we should establish a partnership agreement, a legitimate partnership agreement that's filed, and so everyone is clear.
I
Oh,
think you should always have a partnership agreement. So
yeah,
I'm literally like, I'm an identical twin. I have a podcast and a side business with my twin sister, and we have an agreement. And we got the
absolutely,
same DNA. Like, look,
absolutely.
you're not that cool with nobody to go into business. Let me say that one more time. You ain't cool enough with nobody to go in, not your mama, not your sister, only a spouse, I would say. Anybody else, you're not cool enough to be in business with them and not have set out how the business and the partnership is going to work. I could
Right.
not agree with you more than
And
on that. Get a partnership agreement.
actually, if you're establishing an LLC or a partnership or an S corp with another entity that's outside of your spouse, you're required to have an operating agreement.
Right.
That's a requirement of the LLC. That's a requirement of the articles of incorporation. That's a part of the articles of organization, that there is a signed operating agreement. So everyone, I told Renee and people in Demetra, I was going to say this. So everyone, 2020, the pandemic, everybody's been in the house, and so you start to get your entrepreneurial spirit going, those juices flowing, and all of a sudden, everyone used to like how you used to make the sweet potato pie or that German chocolate cake. And you're like, you know what? I'm sitting here in the house. I'm going to make some cakes and I'm going to sell them. And you sell those cakes without having the proper licensing, the proper equipment. You don't know the laws that requires you, that's required of you to make those sales. Well, you're setting yourself up for liability that you may not be aware of. And so while you may be well intentioned, a lot of danger has happened with good intentions.
So maybe not sell stuff out your house.
Please don't sell stuff out your house. Please.
Right.
Please look, like it's important. Like, we have these health laws, etc., that help to protect the public. We call it
Well, and
public health.
especially in a global health pandemic. Let's don't sell food out your
Yeah,
home in a global health pandemic. Like, no.
right.
Just
Yeah,
say no to food made in somebody's kitchen that you don't really know. Right?
but
Like, let's don't do that. Yeah, I love
because that because but then that goes back to the stroke of bad luck. Someone eats your food and gets sick and sues you. Now,
and
you haven't set up an LLC, you haven't set up any kind of business entity. Guess what? You're getting sued personally. And they're coming after whatever personal assets that you own to cover and to repair that damage that you caused because of the sale.
And
So
that's another great point. And I know we're going to run out of time soon, but I think that's also another point of like why you keep things separate from you as an individual. And so
absolutely.
if you do set up your side business, your side hustle, it doesn't go well, it starts having debt, it doesn't impact you. So maybe the business needs to file for bankruptcy, but you and your boo, y'all cool, right? Because it don't have nothing to do with that. Like, that's over there. It can have to file, but you can't have those separations when you've been commingling
Right.
all your things. And even if you set your LLC up, because I know lots of people, they love LegalZoom and the forms at Office Max, and they go and they have an LLC, but it doesn't have a bank account. And you put all the money in your bank account, and you know you're paying yourself, right? People are paying you individually, even though you set up this LLC. So I say that to say, if you're going to set up the LLC, this is what I mean by why you need a banker. Then the LLC needs a bank account. You know what you need to open up a bank account for an LLC? You need an operating agreement. You need articles of incorporation so that they can see. So it has an EIN number so that those again are separate. So if someone sues you, those assets, they're completely separate. But setting them up and then not following all of the other steps still expose you to liability.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. You get involved in, if you're setting up that separate business, then there needs to be a separate business accounting, and you have to report your business income.
It has to pay taxes.
You get to that honesty thing, right? Like most business people go into business with honesty. You don't get into legitimate business without with this thought that I'm going to be dishonest. Well,
and even if you think you're just creative, I'll share my own story. I got married last year, and I thought it was a genius idea that I would create an LLC that threw events, and it would throw my wedding, right? So I would create an LLC. It would throw my wedding. It would not make any money. And then we could write off of all of the expenses as a loss. I thought I just couldn't believe this was such a genius idea came to me. But then I called my CPA. And I was like, so, I got this idea, what you think? And he was like, I think that's illegal. I don't think you can do that. I think that's fraud. And I was like, oh, like never even crossed my mind it was fraud, right? Like he was like, unless you're going to invite all work people and it's a work event, and then you're going to have other events for this event company, it's going to be a no for you. Yeah. So I say that even when you are well-intentioned, before you go off with your fantastic idea, this is why you need a lawyer, a CPA. I am a lawyer, and I just thought I had boom. No, bad idea.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is an excellent conversation, because these are the conversations that we need to really have to protect yourself. Like, these laws are in place to protect you and to protect your client or your customer.
And your family.
And your family.
And ultimately, it is and should be about, I'm a big advocate of generating wealth, for thinking about wealth as how it's going to look. Always understand that bankruptcy could be a tool towards wealth for your family. Mm-hmm. It is a way for you to shed liabilities and obligations that you can't afford, so that you are that much closer to being able to pass wealth on to your children.
Absolutely. Generational wealth. Absolutely.
These are some, great tips that you guys are sharing. And I think the two most powerful things came from that is that creativity can still be criminal. And
creativity can still be criminal, yes.
Right. And forgetfulness will not be forgiven. So make sure you have professionals in place. We have maybe 1 minute left, but I'm hoping that AC, you can just touch on this really quick, because I don't want to lose this point. Life after bankruptcy, after you finish, the 3 to 5 year plan, what does rebuilding look like?
Yeah, so rebuilding, you're basically eliminating those old bad habits that got you into bankruptcy, and you're forming new financial habits. As a educational psychologist, I also understand behaviorism and financial behaviorism. So if you weren't balancing your checkbook, let's create the habit of balancing your checkbook. If you were not if you didn't have an accounting system in place when you're in business, let's get the financial accounting system in place. Let's learn some things. Let's create something new. Let's generate a new behavior. And this is where a financial advisor or a certified public accountant or certified financial planner can help get you to that process to create that behavior. I tell small business entrepreneurs all the time, take a Friday, take a Saturday morning, take a couple of hours and do your books for the week. Just do your books. Just go through the bank account, go through it, keep an accounting record once a week. If you're not at the level where you can afford a full-time bookkeeper and you're doing it all, you have to allocate time for the financial piece.
AC, do you recommend people using cloud-based like a FreshBooks or I can't think of them, but it's competitor.
I'll say this. I'm a strong, and this is free publicity, and I hate it, but I'm going to give it anyway. I'm a strong advocate for QuickBooks.
Okay, that's what I say, like a QuickBook, FreshBooks, so that you can have, because it's easy to.
So that you can keep an accurate record. But I will say this: understand that this is a tool. It's software. Right. So if you have garbage going in, you're going to have garbage coming out. This is where, if you're not an accountant, but you go ahead and invest in and go to a community college and take an accounting class. Do that. You want to invest in your business. You really want to take your business serious. The accounting, finance is not your thing. Go to a community college. It's going to cost you $300 to take an accounting course for a week, for 6 to 7 weeks or 8 weeks, or however long it is, and learn and get a basic understanding. So when you come to a CPA or you come to a bookkeeper or you come to a tax preparer, you're not coming in with just not knowing nothing, because that's how you also get scammed.
I never thought of that, but you do. That's a great point. You do need, I mean, I kind of assumed that, but you need a basic understanding of balance sheets and income statement. If you don't, again, if you don't know what an income statement is, if you don't know what a balance sheet is, you're not ready to be in business.
Yeah. You can get there, but it takes
a little leisure learning.
Yeah, take the time to invest in yourself and get that knowledge. Like I said, the easiest thing is to go and just enroll into a community college. It's going to cost you $200 or $300. And you'll be educated by a trained professional.
That's a good point to end on.
It is a very good point to end on. And so I hope that our audience has enjoyed this session, investing in themselves with these nuggets of information about bankruptcy. Who knew that a conversation about bankruptcy could be so lively?
I did. I know. That's what we do.
Information shared. To wrap up, I just want to share a couple of reminders. If you haven't already, fill out the participant survey. Fill it out now. If you're watching this later, fill it out. We want to thank again our sponsors. This is part of our Show Me the Money Day series, but we want to thank TCF Bank and Consumers, as well as our partnership with CEDM. And a special thank you to our panelists, Ms. Demetra and Mr. AC Brown, for joining us and sharing this information. This, again, is the last of our Show Me the Money Day series. So if you missed any of our other sessions, please check out YouTube and Facebook and check out our videos. This is the last of Show Me the Money, but not the last for the year. We will be rolling out some more information for you to take advantage of. And I think that's it. So thank you all for participating. I hope you learned something today. I know I sure did. And everybody have a great day. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.